Alright, so here in this video, we're going to look at this 2004 JAMB question, question 3. So the question is, if a body contains 4.9 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid, calculate the amount of copper 2 oxide that will react with it. Given that the relative atomic mass of copper is 64, the relative atomic mass of oxygen is 16, the relative atomic mass of sulfur is 32, and the relative atomic mass of hydrogen is 1. So we are given these options. Alright, so again, the question is, a body contains 4.9 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid. Alright, a body contains 4.9 grams of what? Of tetraoxsulphate acid. Calculate the amount of copper 2 oxide that will react with it. So the first thing I would want to do here is to write a balanced equation for this reaction. So the body contains 4.9 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid, right? Then we are asked to calculate the amount of copper 2 oxide that will react with it. So the tetraoxsulphate acid is reacting with the copper 2 oxide. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to write out a balanced chemical equation for the reaction between tetraoxsulphate acid and copper 2 oxide. Alright, so your tetraoxsulphate acid is H2SO4. Alright, this is the chemical formula for tetraoxsulphate acid. It is reacting with copper 2 oxide, and the chemical formula for copper 2 oxide is CuO. Alright, this is copper 2 oxide. So when these two react, what will be formed? So when these two react, this is an acid, this is a basic oxide, this is a base. So when these two react, it is going to form copper 2 tetraoxsulphate 6, alright, plus water. This is an example of a neutralization reaction. A reaction in which an acid reacts with a base to form salt and water only. Alright, so we have two hydrogen here. We have two hydrogen here. So that's balanced. We have one sulfur here. We have one sulfur here. That's balanced. We have 4 oxygen here, 1 oxygen here, making it 5 oxygen. We have 4 oxygen here. We have 1 oxygen here, 5 oxygen. So the oxygen on both sides of the equation are balanced. All right. Then we have 1 copper here, 1 copper here. So this equation is balanced. This is a balanced chemical equation. All right. So having done this, the next thing I will do is to look for the mass of tetraoxsulphate acid here, and also look for the mass of copper 2 oxide. All right. So what is the relative molecular mass, or what is the molecular mass of tetraoxsulphate acid, H2SO4? So the molecular mass is equal to H2 plus S plus O4. Alright, so this will be equal to the relative atomic mass of hydrogen is 1, so that is 1 times 2, alright, plus the relative atomic mass of sulfur is 32, plus the relative atomic mass of oxygen is 16 times the 4 atoms of oxygen that I have there. Alright, so this will be equal to 1 times 2 will give us 2 plus 32 plus 16 times 4 will give us what? 64. So when you add all this together, 2 plus 32 plus 64, that will be equal to what? That will be equal to 98 grams. Alright, so the relative molecular mass of tetraoxsulphate acid is what? 98 grams. Alright, also we are going to calculate the relative molecular mass of copper 2 oxide. Alright, because the question says calculate the amount of copper 2 oxide that will react with it. Alright, that will react with this tetraoxsulphate acid. So we'll calculate the relative molecular mass of copper 2 oxide. So the formula for copper 2 oxide, this is the mass of copper 2 oxide here. Alright, CuO. So the relative molecular mass of copper 2 oxide, CuO, will be equal to the relative atomic mass of copper plus oxygen. All right. So the relative atomic mass of copper is what? Is 64 plus the relative atomic mass of oxygen, which is 16. All right. So when you add this together, 64 plus 16, that will be equal to what? 80 grams. All right. So the mass or the molecular mass of tetraoxsulphate acid in the reaction is what? Is 98 grams. And the molecular mass of copper 2 oxide in the reaction is what? Is 80 grams. All right. So 98 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid, all right, 98 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid would be needed to react with 80 grams of what? Of copper 2 oxide. All right, from this balanced equation, we need 98 grams of this tetraoxsulphate acid to react with 80 grams of copper 2 oxide. The question again is, if a body contains 4.9 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid, calculate the amount of copper 2 oxide that will react with it. All right, so if 98 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid is needed to react with 80 grams of copper 2 oxide, then 4.9 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid H2SO4 would require 4.9 times 80 divided by 98 grams of what? Of copper 2 oxide. So when you impute this into your calculator, this will be 4.9 times 80, all right, equal to 392 divided by 98, that will be equal to 4. So this will be equal to what? 4 grams. All right. So 4.9 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid H2SO4 would require 4 grams of what? Of copper 2 oxide. All right. So this is the answer to this question. It's a very simple and a straightforward question. So the first thing that you should know how to do is to be able to write a balanced chemical equation. Of course, this is a neutralization reaction and you expect salt and water to be formed. All right. And then you would calculate the mass of tetraoxsulphate acid that is here and the mass of copper 2 oxide that is here. So the mass of tetraoxsulphate acid here is 98 grams. And the mass of copper 2 oxide here is 80 grams. So 98 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid would need 80 grams of copper 2 oxide. All right. Then the question is to find what mass of copper 2 oxide that will react with 4.9 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid. So 4.9 grams of tetraoxsulphate acid would require 4.9 times 80 divided by 98, and that will give you 4 grams of copper 2 oxide. All right. So what you are simply doing here, you are using these 4 grams to multiply this and to divide this. All right. So 4.9 times 80 divided by what? 98, and that is what I wrote here. So the correct answer here is option B. All right, 4 grams. It's a very simple and a straightforward question.